Hello everyone, welcome to the Magic of Migration webinar by BirdLife International and friends. Let's first have a very warm welcome to everybody who's joined so far. I see people still coming in. First to speak is my boss, Patricia Zurita, the CEO of BirdLife International.
Thanks, Barend, and welcome everybody. As you heard, I'm Patricia Zurita. I'm the Chief Executive of BirdLife International, and there are few things about the work that BirdLife does that excites me the most, as it is the migration. We are here to celebrate the migration, to listen to how the birds are telling us that we have to work together, because it doesn't really matter how much effort we put on protecting sites for birds that are living only a couple of months in one site when they are actually taking incredible journeys, thousands of kilometers to go to places that may be not as protected. So that means that we have to work together, that we have to join forces, that we have to remember that we're all together on this planet. And the magic of the migration is helping us realize how connected we are to nature and how important it is that we put nature at the heart of all of our solutions. So this just to say that we at the BirdLife family are connected by birds, that we cherish and are continuing to be amazed by all of the wonders of the migration. I just heard that a bar-tailed godwit had broken the record of the longest flight between, was it in New Zealand and Alaska, just recently. I mean, this is something that continues to amaze us, and it continues to energize us to make sure that we are protecting all these amazing places that they use through their journeys, but as an element that helps us conserve and protect the rest of nature for the future of not only birds and the rest of species, but for our future. We depend on the birds, we depend on nature, and unless we actually work together, we will not make it happen. So just a very quick welcome to all of you. We have an extraordinary set of panelists that are going to help us cherish all of this great wonders of the migration and learn a lot. And I will come back after all of these great people at the closing. So thanks so much for having me, and thanks to all of you who are joining us from all over the world.
Thank you, Patricia. We now move over to Amy Fraenkel, the Executive Secretary of the Convention of Migratory Species. We're very happy to have you with us today.
Great, thank you so much. And thanks for the invitation to share a few words today about the role of CMS, the Convention on Migratory Species, governments, non-governmental organizations, and others who are involved with us for the conservation of migratory birds. If you go to the next slide, World Migratory Bird Day, as you know, we just celebrated on the 10th of October, which marks the second seasonal movement of migratory birds. And I want to thank BirdLife in particular, as well as other partners around the world, for making it a great success. Now, the focus of this webinar builds perfectly on the theme of this year's World Migratory Bird Day, which is Birds Connect Our World. Now, at its core, this theme is about how migratory birds need our help across their flyways in order to move from one place to the next, and how we are connected through all the many individual and collective actions that help them on their way. So they can't get to their next location unless we, wherever they are, wherever we are, take action. Slide 3 will show you some basic facts about the Convention on Migratory Species. As you probably know, it's a multilateral environment agreement under the United Nations. It's the only treaty to focus on the conservation of migratory species and their habitats, including not only avian species, but also terrestrial and aquatic species. Now, there are currently 131 parties to CMS, and this number is growing, and we've added quite a few parties just in the last year. If you go to slide 4, you'll see, just very briefly, this points out that there are numerous specialized agreements under CMS, some of which are listed here. And in total, there are actually over 160 governments that are somehow involved in the work of what we call the CMS family of agreements. Now we'll get to the heart of our work on the next slide, which talks about CMS and its two appendices. The idea here is that if species are really in trouble and need a focus of international cooperation, parties as well as non-governmental organizations, observers can nominate different species added to these appendices. So this is really at the core of our work, and the appendix 1 is that are endangered, and appendix 2 is for species favorable conservation status. There are about 100 avian species listed on appendix 1 and over 800 2. This is the other area of our work, which is looking at threats. So we want to not just identify, obviously what are the species of concern, what are the things we need to focus on? And these are some of the main two migratory birds as well as other species. So you'll see the first is overexploitation. Issues is illegal killing of birds, for example, poaching, hunting that is not permitted. And the second is habitat loss and fragmentation. Those two alone are the top threats to avian as well as other species. They are all, I might add, directly linked to issues around infectious disease. And so we have all the more reason to try to address these. Now, if you go to the slide, this gets into very brief parties as well as our role as a secretary. Because the convention is a formal intergovernmental agreement, it's really up to governments to implement the commitments that they have under this. However, as we know well with our partnership with BirdLife and others, first in terms of the of parties, just to brief that parties are obligated to stop, prevent any taking of animals that belong listed on Appendix 1, and to enter into international agreements to address species listed in Appendix 2. So that's the roadmap, but there's also mitigations to address the threats that you've seen on the slide through resolutions and decisions. And because of that, there's truly a collective effort. There are many, many different efforts on species, specific species, task force, for example, the energy task force that addresses threats from energy, including renewable energy for birds. And there are also, we get funding and support and partnership, both in kind and financially through governments and others. The Secretariat, our role, I won't go into too much, but we facilitate all of the meetings, all the activities and implementation. The last slide, I am talking quickly, but I want to just get to this very important point, which is the role of NGOs and other stakeholders. In one word, it's essential. And CMS may have one of the more pragmatic approaches to how NGOs and others contribute to implementation. NGOs are not just observers. They can observe at our meeting, but they can contribute to our meetings. Experts from the NGO community can even serve on different bodies that we have, including our scientific council, and of course, helping us implement the work on the ground. So let me stop there. It's a lot to absorb, but we have a lot going on, and we are grateful for all of you caring about these issues and for our great partner, BirdLife, as well as others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy, for that excellent introduction to the CMS. I will quickly move to my own presentation. I will introduce myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Barend van Gemerden, and I work for BirdLife International, where I coordinate the Global Flyways program. Today, we are celebrating bird migration, and it's a perfect time to do so. Here in the Netherlands, we witnessed yesterday one of the most massive arrival of migratory birds from the north, especially redwings. A friend of mine who lives on the coast, where they recorded more than 400,000 birds, described it as a flying carpet of thrushes. So let's talk about great migrations. Patricia already talked a little bit about this new record of a bird flying in a single flight from Alaska to New Zealand. It took 11 days of non-stop flying and covering 12,200 kilometers. And this bar-tailed godwit, which was satellite tagged, made it, navigated all across the Pacific Ocean to arrive in New Zealand to find exactly the kind of muddy coastal wetland it likes to feed on. Another example of a great migration is this tiny ruby-throated hummingbirds. These birds weigh less than 3 grams. The size, well, you can see in the picture how tiny they are. Still, they migrate 3,000 kilometers from their breeding grounds in the northern part of the United States, Canada, to Central America. And when they do that, they don't go over land. They cross the Gulf of Mexico. And doing that, that takes them 25 hours to cross the 850-kilometer stretch of sea. And you know, this is a hummingbird. It's tiny and it's known for its fast wing beats. And it's with an average wing beats of 50 beats per second. It takes this little hummingbird 4.5 million wing beats to cross the Gulf of Mexico. And if it stops, it drowns. Okay, so there are also some birds that are pretty lazy when they're migrating. The soaring birds are a good example of that, such as storks, pelicans, and many species of raptor. Essentially what they do, they let themselves be carried by hot pockets of hot air. And once they have enough height, they glide to the next pocket. And like this, they move along vast distances without moving a feather. There are certain spots where you can see these birds and the spectacular migration going on there because they like to avoid open water. They're quite predictable in places like Batumi, Gibraltar, Eilat, in the African-Eurasian Flyway. So for instance, in Batumi, 300,000 raptors have been seen on a single day. So I trust that you agree with me that bird migration is quite magical. However, next slide, these are also risky journeys. What migratory birds do is travel. So they need to move from one place to the other to raise their young and to the places where they spend their non-breeding seasons. And birds can be quite predictable. So for instance, in Europe, breeding common white-throats, they tend to breed in the same bushes in the breeding grounds and then migrate to Africa to winter in the same bushes every year. So crossing borders, continents, mountains, oceans, and deserts comes with risk. But still, it's a profitable strategy for birds to raise enough young to counter for the losses they experience on the way. And that way, they keep the population stable. However, bird migration now takes place in a world dominated by humans. And in general, that is not a good thing for migratory birds. A total of 336 migratory birds are currently at risk. That is a scary 17% of all migratory birds. And problems occur in all flyways and on all species groups. In some regions, our understanding of the status of migratory birds is far from complete. So a few of the major human threats to migratory birds. Thank you. One of them is the degradation of coastal and inland wetlands. So we're losing sites that are crucially important for migratory birds because they're also of high interest to human development. So this is a picture of in South Korea of a seawall that has been built. The land behind it, which was a perfect mudflat for migratory shorebirds, has now been filled and converted to industry. Next slide. Another major threat is the too intensive use of landscapes. So intensive agriculture or overgrazing are huge threats, especially for land birds. Next slide. Poorly positioned energy infrastructure is a risk to migratory soaring birds, especially birds that live longer and take longer to reproduce themselves. Even a loss of a few individuals of all the birds is a risk to the whole population. And finally, a human threat I want to show is the illegal killing or hunting, as it's called in some regions, of migratory birds. And it's done for food. I'm afraid to say it's also done for fun. Only in the Mediterranean, every year, 25 million birds are killed illegally by mist nets, shooting, lime sticks, etc. Next slide. So groups of birds broadly use similar routes to migrate. These migration highways are called flyways. So we have 3 in Americas, 3 between Eurasia and Africa, 1 in the Central Asia, and 1 connecting the East Asia to the Pacific. Well, this looks pretty neat. Keep in mind that the boundaries of the flyways are human constructs. So I'm going to show 2 examples. Next one. So this is, well, the flyways, like we used to see them, they go north-south generally. There's also birds that go completely different. So see Shetland, redneck phalaropes, they move to Peru. There's another one, it's the common swift, ringed and satellite tagged in Beijing, which moved all westwards and ended up in South Africa. However, next one. Whatever the exceptions, the concept of flyways helps to conserve migratory birds. It helps to understand what, from the perspective of a migratory bird, is the geographical area that they depend on. Only if birds can find what they need in all the places they visit throughout the year, a population can be expected to thrive. And a problem in the breeding grounds can have consequences for the number of birds showing up in the wintering grounds, and the other way around. As migratory birds typically cross national borders and even continents, the responsibility for their conservation is shared by all the people in all the countries that they pass through. International collaboration is therefore crucial for the conservation of migratory birds. Like Amy already highlighted, CMS is an important instrument to tackle the problems of migratory birds. Another one is the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. Within these frameworks, and often in dialogue, the government, civil society, research institutions, local communities, but also corporates and consumers sit down and discuss what needs to be done to save migratory birds. And only if we jointly address the bottlenecks in the flyways, we can save the birds we all call our own. Next slide. So BirdLife International, conservation of migratory birds is one of the priorities, as Patricia already highlighted, one of the priorities for BirdLife International. I guess you all know BirdLife International. Very quick recap. We are the world's largest nature conservation partnership, uniting over 100 national partners worldwide. Partners are collaborating along all major flyways. They work on local sites, but also joined up to address global policy issues. BirdLife's work is underpinned by cutting-edge scientific research. We work on the ground to prevent extinctions, preserve important habitats, and sustain the vital ecological systems that underpin human livelihoods. We build capacity of local organizations, combining knowledge and resources to generate action greater than the sum of our parts. As said, the conservation of migratory birds is central to the work of BirdLife, and through this webinar, we want to celebrate the amazing efforts made to conserve the magic of migration. Much is still to be done, let's not forget that, but today is about showing some examples of what happens if we all unite and work together, how migratory birds then benefit from conservation action. Next slide. So we selected a few examples that shows what can be done. The first talk will be on Spoon-billed Sandpiper, and we have a talk on the Egyptian vulture migration. We have an intermezzo by an artist, Xavi. We have a talk about Grasslands work in South America, and we will, of course, discuss the illegal bird killing in the Mediterranean. Finally, we have a small pitch for some fun, the Global Bird Weekend, that's coming weekend. And after all of this, there will be a possibility to answer questions. So during the presentations, you are kindly requested to enter your questions in the Q&A. So if you move down your cursor to the bottom of your screen, the toolbar will show that has a Q&A button that allows you to enter questions. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. Please don't use the language that you are most comfortable with. We'll make an effort to answer all of them. And then, without further ado, I move to the talk by Sayam Chowdhury. He is the assistant coordinator of the Spoon-billed Sandpiper task force of the EAAFP.
Hello. Sorry that I had to record this talk because my internet connection is not very reliable. I'll be talking about Spoon-billed Sandpiper and what we are doing across the East Asia Australasian Flyway on the conservation of the Spoon-billed Sandpiper. So I represent the Spoon-billed Sandpiper task force under the East Asia Australasian Flyway partnership, and I work as an assistant coordinator of the task force. So as you know, the Spoon-billed Sandpiper is one of the most threatened birds in the world, and it has a global population of probably less than 200 breeding pairs. It breeds in Far East Russia, as you can see in the map, and it travels down to Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Thailand to spend its winter through Korea and China. And it's also one of the cutest birds in the world, I would claim. So the Spoon-billed Sandpiper is facing a wide variety of problems, and because of that, it became critically endangered. One of those is habitat loss, and the other one is hunting and trapping in the main wintering areas. And as you can see in the graph to the right, is without conservation interventions, we had predicted in 2011 that it probably would have gone extinct by now if we didn't intervene. So I'll tell you in the next few slides what we are doing to save the Spoon-billed Sandpipers. In this map of the East Asia Australasia Flyway, you can see the yellow marks of the Spoon-billed Sandpiper records and distribution, and the red circles are where we are currently operating in terms of conservation and surveys. So we have so far covered almost the entire flyway where the bird occurs. I will start with our work in Russia. So we currently, Birds Russia is leading the work in Russia in a small village called Manipilgano in Chukotka. And the work involves studying breeding biology, productivity and survival of the Spoon-billed Sandpiper. Also, we are color marking the birds and satellite tracking them. And most importantly, we have initiated head starting in 2012, which means that we collect eggs from the Spoon-billed Sandpiper clutches and incubate them and hand rear them and then release them back in the wild. By doing that, we have, I'll show you in the next slide. So we have so far released more than 100 hand-reared Spoon-billed Sandpipers in the wild. And the photo to the right, 3M, I have taken that picture from Sonadi Island in Bangladesh, and it was hand-reared and marked in Russia. So it's one of the key interventions that we are currently having in Russia, and we have released more than 100 birds so far under this intervention. So if I travel down, follow the Spoon-billed Sandpiper migration in China in Jiangsu coast, we have a scheme of color marking Spoon-billed Sandpiper regular surveys, as well as satellite tracking. And you can see in the map to the right that these 3 Spoon-billed Sandpiper that were satellite tracked in Jiangsu coast had migrated successfully. One came to Bangladesh, one stayed in South China, and the other one stayed in Vietnam. In China, Teozuni is one of the key sites of the Spoon-billed Sandpiper near Shanghai. It had supported more than 100 birds in recent years, but it was also threatened by development. But thanks to a wide variety of partners, government and international organizations who have worked to secure this ground, and now the area is a World Heritage Site. And farther down in South China, where we have problem with misnetting, large-scale misnetting, and we have partnered with the Hong Kong Bird Society and the Zhejiang Bird Society in order to address that problem. Even in last year, we have removed 110 illegal nets from the area. In Myanmar, we have similar approaches. We have secured the two main wintering sites of the Spoon-billed Sandpiper. The Gulf of Motama was designated as a Ramsar site in 2017, and Nantar Island was recently designated as a Ramsar site. We have also worked with the local communities. We have worked with the local hunters and initiated alternative livelihood support for them. In Bangladesh, we did similar activities as you saw in Myanmar. We have worked with the local hunters and provided them with alternative livelihood support. And the key three Spoon-billed Sandpiper sites are now legally protected. Shonadia Island is a ecological critical area. And the new site that we have discovered that held 48 Spoon-billed Sandpiper is now a Flyway network site. And Nishumdeep National Park in the central south coast of Bangladesh is also legally protected. In Thailand, we do slightly different work where we have a few Spoon-billed Sandpipers wintering, approximately 8 to 10 Spoon-billed Sandpipers. Our local partner BCST has acquired a land that is a salt pan, and now it is established as a Paktale Nature Reserve, where we manage the area to support shorebirds, especially the Spoon-billed Sandpiper. And all this work in the last 3 countries are supported by ICFC, International Conservation Fund of Canada, and the Rainforest Trust. So that was it. That was a very brief description of what we are doing. And if you are interested to know more about our work on Spoon-billed Sandpiper, we can visit these 2 sites, the Saving Spoon-billed Sandpiper and the East Asia Australasia Flyway Partnership site. Before I end, I would like to thank many of the organizations who have supported us, especially the RSPB. They have supported us from the breeding to the wintering grounds. And now the key funding organizations are the ICFC and Rainforest Trust, as I have mentioned earlier. Thank you very much. I will be here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sayam. That's an excellent talk, and for bringing everybody up to speed with the work on the Spoon-billed Sandpiper. The next talk is by Stoyan Nikolov from the Bulgarian partner of BirdLife International, BSPB. Go ahead, Stoyan.
Thank you, Barend. Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about one of the most charismatic birds on the planet, the Egyptian vulture. Actually, I think that everyone is in love in the bird he or she works with. So Egyptian vulture definitely is a unique bird, the only long migratory vulture in Europe. I think Barend thought that migratory soaring birds are lazy, but actually they are clever because they actually economize their energy along the perilous journey from the breeding grounds to Africa. Egyptian vulture fly over 4,000 kilometers, and it's not sure when and where it will find food and roosting site. So why they're so slow, but actually they can go this distance for only 2 weeks. In the past, Egyptian vulture, as many other vultures and scavenging birds, was quite widespread in Eurasia and Africa, patrolling around almost every rubbish dump, implementing their ecological function of nature cleaning crews and stopping the spread of diseases. And these ancient times, people was impressed by these birds and respected them a lot. This is why there are so many myths and legends. It is called Pharaoh chick. It was breeding on the Egyptian pyramids. There is a hieroglyph with their shape. In the Balkans, we call it the messenger of spring or cuckoo's horse. Anyway, this bird was highly respected, but unfortunately nowadays, because of the modern world, the resources for these birds are less and less, and they face new threats which they can hardly adapt with. Currently, the Egyptian vulture is among the globally endangered birds and one of the most threatened birds in Europe. In Europe, the population declined with 50% over the last 50 years. In India and Africa, it declined with 80–90%, while in the Balkans, where we work mostly, the population declined with 80% for 30 years only. Obviously, this bird needs our urgent help, and its future is in our hands. But we cannot really mitigate the threats without enough knowledge about its biology, ecology, and details about the causes of mortality. Indeed, birds connect our world. It is impossible to conserve the migratory bird without international collaboration. In 2017, an alliance of about 20 partners united to conserve the Balkan population of the Egyptian vultures. We started a massive survey on the mortality causes. We used the satellite telemetry to investigate their migratory routes, the places of mortality, where and when it happens. Also, as per the major mortality causes listed by Barend, which are namely the non-intentional poisoning due to human-carnivore conflict, the electrocution and collision with hazardous energy infrastructure, and direct persecution, we started to investigate the so-called black spots of mortality along the flyway. We tagged 60 birds with satellite transmitters. We surveyed over 4,000 kilometers of power lines. We conducted over 900 interviews with local people to understand more about their perceptions and problems they have, which leads to indirect problems to vultures. And of course, we monitor annually the breeding population in the Balkans and also the migrating birds and some bottleneck sites such as Sarımaza in Turkey and wintering congregations in Africa, where over 1,600 vultures congregate in winter to roost and feed together. In Turkey, every year we can count over 900 Egyptian vultures crossing a very narrow bottleneck. This knowledge allows us to monitor the impact of our conservation efforts and to inform our better conservation strategy. What we do actually to mitigate the threats, we use the very good example for Greece to implement efficient anti-poison activities, such as work with the authorities, develop national anti-poison strategies, such already exist for Greece, Albania, North Macedonia. We are developing such in Bulgaria. We work with the institutions to increase their capacity by series of trainings. We provide them with the relevant equipment which can help to investigate this severe problem. We call it silent killer because it's very hard to investigate. We also create a local networks of stakeholders which are against the use of poisons and try to test different alternatives to poison, such as electric fences, shepherd's dogs, light systems, and so on, to decrease the risk of attacks from predators on the livestock. And we are managing 3 anti-poison dog units in the Balkans, which help to prevent from poisoning. Every year they discover hundreds of poison baits, which are removed from the wild. They also help to investigate different cases and provide them to the court. In terms of the power lines, in short term, we try to insulate the hazardous power lines, identified areas with high mortality of birds. So far, we insulated 500 poles, but we intend to insulate thousands more along the flyway in the Middle East and Africa. In long term, we collaborate very closely with the Migratory Soaring Birds Project and Safe Flyways MAVA projects to develop national standards for bird-safe energy infrastructure. To stop persecution, we work mostly with the police, customs, and rangers to enforce the legislation. But in the Middle East, our partners are working to create so-called responsible hunting, while in Africa, our partners in Nigeria are working with traditional healers to find plant-based alternatives to vulture use in traditional medicine. Of course, we support all international campaigns, some of which have been already mentioned, such as the World Migratory Bird Day, International Vulture Awareness Day. We also support the Flight for Survival campaign of BirdLife International. We implement our own flyway campaign, which is called A Mile for the Egyptian Vulture, in which we compete real-time with tagged vultures. and we participate in many other running events. We also have a campaign at the airports, and so far we reached over 4 million people. We also developed an environmental education program, and we work with over 1,200 pupils so far in a network of more than 20 schools along the Flyway. Last but not least, due to the large geographic scope of the threats, due to the deep cultural roots of some of the threats, such as poisoning and direct persecution, and the fact that we discovered that there is a high mortality of juveniles drawing into the sea during their first migration, we started to test some reinforcement methods in the Balkans, which are namely hacking, which is using artificial nests to release captive bred Egyptian vultures, fostering, which is actually adoption of captive bred chicks by wild parents, and delayed release, which is releasing birds which are 1, 2 or more years old into the wild to avoid mortality into the sea. Of course, all this is done through the support of captive breeding program, which is strongly supported by Prague Zoo under European Association of Zoos and Aquaria and Grill Balkans. And we already have some good signs, such as we prove higher survival of individuals released by delayed release and fostering compared to the wild individuals. And we also this year discovered 4 territories which were reoccupied by Egyptian vulture in the Balkans, which is a real light into the tunnel. I'm using the opportunity to thank the long list of our partners along the Flyway for their brilliant work. And I would like to invite you to visit our website if you would like to learn more about our work. Currently, we are managing a petition against an amendment of the Bulgarian hunting law, which aims to legalize the use of poison bites into the nature, together with some other non-selective hunting methods, which can destroy not only vultures, but biodiversity in Bulgaria and all neighboring countries. So please support this petition. Many thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you, Stoyan, for an excellent talk. I propose that you share the link with us.
The link is on the last slide.
Yeah, the link for the petition, so yes, we can share it with the attendants.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for the excellent talk. Everyone, please continue asking questions. The next presentation, I'm really delighted to have him with us. He will do a pre-recorded presentation and he will explain everything what he's doing, but it's amazing. He is online, Xavi is online, so if you have questions for him, he can answer.
Hello, my name is Xavi. I'm going to talk about my artistic project, Ornitographies. Ornitographies is about to make visible the beauty of the bird flight tracks. My passion for nature begins very early. When I was a child, my grandfather took me with him in his daily walks around the Delta del Llobregat, a wetland area near to Barcelona. Then I realized there were many species of birds, and every single bird have a different behavior, different way of flight, or different calls. My curiosity began there until today. Probably these walks were the seed that grew until the actual project Ornitographies. 7 years ago, one day, watching a wildlife paw prints, I think about myself, what kind of tracks will leave the bird in the sky if that was possible? So I imagined these lines in the sky and I thought, okay, I want to make it visible. How can I do it? And I make research and I realized that the way to make it visible is taking many pictures per second and stitch all these frames together into a single one. When I begin this project, I start with single birds and more simple flights. This is yellow-legged seagulls flying next to me. And when you look close to a bird flying, what appears is the wave produced by the flapping. So it's interesting because of the different morphology of every bird and the different way of they fly, they produce different frequencies. And if we take a more far look of this flight, for example, in this group of flamingos, what you see, it's also a regular organic shape. It's different, say, look at it from next than from above it. It's also from above this picture of northern lapwings. I was curious how it looked like a group of vultures flying uprising the air into a hot thermal currents. So this is what it looked like. It looked like a tornado. There are hundreds of them flying in the hot thermal currents. So they don't need to flap. That's why here you can see the wave. So after more simple flights, I researched to a more complex ones. I love to work with swifts because have a very complex behavior. One reason is because they fit in the air, so they don't go to one point to another point. So they need to fly in the more chaotic way to find some food. But also in the afternoon and in the morning, they have some kind of social behavior. They chase each other, they fly in circles. So the drive that they produce in the sky was so different. Another birds are so very complex that I like them working on it a lot. It's starlings. In winter, starlings, they gather in groups to feed in the fields, but it was at dawn where they look for an overnight area that these groups join into a huge ones. And it's in this moment raptors like hawks attack them. They produce this mesmerizing dance, very well known, that people call it murmuration. This particular dance for me is very interesting because the result, the shape that creates was so complex and so interesting for me. And also for the reason that the hawk is like carving this ephemeral sculpture. So it's not only the starlings that I'm making this final draw, and also the hawk that is changing it. Also, I do a short film about this behavior. Because we are talking about the migrant birds and the importance of migration. One of my experience with migration was a couple of years ago. I traveled to southern Spain, to Zurita, to record this migration. And what I found that when I arrived, the wind was very strong. And what happened is that there appeared fog in the sea. So the birds could not see Africa. So for kites and for the storks, if they don't see it, they don't cross it. So the migration stops. But what I discovered is hundreds of black kites were waiting in a field for the good conditions. So the first time in the morning, they rise up and they fly towards the wind, looking if the conditions are good for cross to Africa. So these strange shapes is because they are flying up, down, but almost in the same point. And when they are okay, they turn around and they make this big turn. Fortunately, since the first publication more than 5 years ago, this project can be widely published. Since a full article in the international edition of National Geographic, to The Guardian, to Wired, so many others. It was really interesting that people from many fields get in touch with me, from mathematicians, physicists, biologists, choreographers, or musicians. This is an ongoing project. I keep creating new images, planning future exhibitions, and working in my future book. For most of the people, birds are unnoticed. Only if we realize they are there, we could love them. And if we love them, we could take care about them conservation. I would like that this project will be an invitation to stop our stressful life for a few seconds and look at the sky. We will probably find a gift from nature. Thank you very much.
Isn't that an absolutely amazing photographer? I'm so happy. Thank you, Xavi, for joining. I really am impressed. Please ask if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A, and I'm sure Xavi can help answer them and help spread the word. So the next talk is by Joaquin Aldabe, and he will talk about the Southern Cone Grasslands work, saving land birds in South America. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being there, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk about our program in the Southern Cone of South America. I live in Uruguay, and I am here with my mate, that is very typical of this region. The Pampas biome is a region of about 7,550 kilometers squared, and it has been very damaged because of land use change, because of agriculture and forestry, and also because cattle ranching, when it is not done in the correct way, it can decrease bird diversity. That's why 15 years ago, BirdLife partners in Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina started to work together. And the key of the program was to work with ranchers, because most of the area, most of the region is privately owned. So, and protected areas are not big enough. There's a lot of economic interest on the soil because it's very productive for food, and so it's hard to make conservation through protected areas. So the conservation and the work with ranchers is key, and in that issue we have been working through these 15 years. One of the main results that we obtained, that we were successful, was to change the way that landowners see the conservation. The way they used to see the conservation was that it was not possible if production was the main objective in a farm. And we worked hard on changing that to producers, but also to conservationists and biologists. And now most of people, or a lot of people, is aware that it is possible to work with nature, to work taking care of grasslands and the birds and the biodiversity, and at the same time to make economic use of their farms. And that is a very important change that we promoted through the Grassland Alliance in the Southern Cone. This picture is of a rancher in Laguna de Rocha, that is a site that, in Uruguay, that it has a lot of grassland shorebirds, like the buff-breasted sandpiper, and he's with the bird. We worked hard trying to involve ranchers, and we have currently more than 500 ranches covering 600,000 hectares of grasslands. But also we reached the governments and we helped them to promote programs that conserve grasslands in farmland areas. For example, in Brazil, the government in the south of Brazil, the government of Rio Grande do Sul, has a program that motivates and economically incentivizes the landowners for producing cattle in natural grasslands. Using that as science, we promoted management of cattle so that it is compatible compatible with grassland shorebirds. for example, in Laguna de Rocha in eastern Uruguay, we have big concentrations of buff-breasted sandpipers and American golden plovers. These birds migrate about 50,000 kilometers. They breed in the Arctic, and they came here in the austral spring and summer. They need very short grass, as you can see here, between 2 and 8 centimeters, and they use lowland areas. So we worked with ranchers, and with the support of the government, we worked with them to promote a management of cattle so that grazing intensity is adequate for having that grass height. And also we helped them with the management of the whole farm, giving support to fences and the general global management of the farm. This produced a conservation of at least 50,000 grassland shorebirds. One of the main threats to birds in the grasslands in South America, in the pampas, are tall grass birds, because they need more than 1 meter grass height, and traditional cattle grazing doesn't allow this grass height. We need to protect the chestnut seed-eater, a vulnerable species. We need to protect pampas finch. It's a common bird, but we need to keep it common. Also grass wren and marsh seed-eater. These birds, they have a very high requirement of grass height. So how we did this, how we are facing this threat? Well, we are working with landowners to promote a management of the grazing that allows some paddocks to stay without grazing for some time, between 1 and 3 months, so that the grass increases its height. And we studied the effect of this system, that is rotation system, versus a traditional continuous grazing system, and we found that it is better for birds as bird diversity increased in about 15%. Another thing that we do here in the farms is to protect with fences, with exclosures of grazing, these tussock grasslands and wetlands that are very important for tall grassland birds, for feeding and nesting. We did recently an assessment of the status of the assemblage or the community of the birds in a sample of 40 farms in the Grassland Alliance, and we used an index of bird assemblage healthy, taking in consideration the diversity of species, the presence of threatened species, the presence of migratory species, the abundance of tall grass species, etc. And we found that almost 60% of the farms have a good or excellent condition in the bird community. And overall, in these 40 ranches, we estimated that we are protecting 11,500 grassland birds, and which includes 150 grassland birds in total. Another very important and pretty successful program in the Grassland Alliance is the certification of the meat. We created a level that distinguishes the production process. Those ranchers that produce the meat in natural grasslands are receiving 2% overprice of the meat they sell. Average, for each animal they sell, they are perceiving $8 more than if they were not in the Grassland Alliance program certification scheme. So my concluding remarks is that we promoted a shift in the paradigm, and we are that produced while conserving is possible. We could add an economic value to grassland bird habitat. We promoted specific science-based management habitat, and we are conserving more than 50,000 grassland shorebirds, and we are protecting about 150,000 grassland birds in the 500 farms. We identified best management practices and we are applying them and disseminating. We estimate that 70% of farms of the Grassland Alliance are in good conditions, but we need to work more, especially for tall grass birds. And we conclude that our program has been successful, but these ranches only cover 1% of the southern cone grassland biome. So we need to continue increasing the number of ranches and to continue increasing the management they are doing in the farms. So I want to give a special thanks to our donors that are here in this slide. And I would be delighted to receive questions of whatever of the issues I talked about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joaquin, for that excellent work and the impressive results of the Southern Cone Grassland Alliance. Everyone, please ask questions and don't hesitate to ask Joaquin questions in Spanish. Now moving to the presentation by Elena and Tassos of BirdLife Cyprus on illegal killing.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we will be doing this joint presentation. So essentially, BirdLife Cyprus, we've been monitoring the illegal bird trapping issue since 2002. Our campaign is one of the longest on the island, but probably worldwide on an illegal bird killing issue. And it has three main pillars. It has a systematic surveillance program that I will touch upon a bit. Then we have an advocacy lobbying pillar, and the final and as equally important, the awareness raising pillar. So it's a holistic approach that it didn't necessarily start like that, but through the years, it's nearly 20 years, it has evolved into a more complete campaign. So regarding the issue, so essentially in Cyprus, we have a big issue with the illegal bird trapping with nets, mist nets, or with lime sticks that they are placed in vegetated areas. And they're essentially capturing songbirds, migratory songbirds, for the illegal consumption, either in restaurants or for home consumption. Like I mentioned, the systematic monitoring has been going on since 2002. And we are covering the key hotspot areas on the island. On the map, you can see there is a few hotspots, but the key ones are in the eastern part of the island, and it's because there are actually key migratory corridors, and the birds are migrating between Europe and Africa. The key trapping season is actually as we are currently speaking. So the main trapping season is autumn migration, when the targeted species, the blackcaps, the warblers, and the list is almost like 40, 45 different bird species. They are fat and they are considered a delicacy in Cyprus for the people that they are consuming them. And essentially, we have a field team that goes outside in these areas and covers a randomly selection of squares, gather the data, and these data are then analyzed to produce trends, as you can see in the graph. These trends and this systematic monitoring firstly gives us a very clear picture of whether illegal bird trapping levels go up or down. You can see we've had remarkable success and a decrease in the last 3 years. It also allows us and gives us a standing point in any meetings that we have with ministers, with members of the parliaments, with any bureaucrats. We have our own independent work where we can lobby and pressure if more action needs to be taken. And essentially this work is published in our reports. The work we see and the decrease that we've noticed in the last 3 years, it's unprecedented. is because of a very good cooperation we've been having with the competent authorities. In Cyprus, there are areas that are governed by their UK territories, and one of those areas was a trapping hotspot. So after a lot of pressure, we have improved cooperation, and in fact, a number of measures were taken. One of them was covert surveillance. So essentially, RSPB investigations team in collaboration with us, they placed hidden cameras. We got trappers on camera. They were prosecuted, taken to court. The video footage was used as part of the evidence. And in this way, they were issued deterrent fines. And this work has been ongoing, and other measures that have been taken, the use of technology, drones, bail sentences, all that, a complete package has led to this impressive reduction that we see in the graph. Essentially, that's that from me. I'll pass you on to my colleague, Elena.
Hi, everyone. So the work that Tassos has just mentioned needs to go hand in hand with awareness raising work and education work. And we're investing in the younger generations and putting particular focus in our education program, which is constantly growing and evolving. And I want to share some of our recent highlights of this effort. We have developed an education program that now has island-wide coverage, but with particular focus in the two areas Tassos mentioned, the two illegal bird killing black spots of our island, that is Larnaca and Famagusta district. The education program has been approved by the Ministry of Education and revolves around the hero of ours, Ulysses the Blackcap, through whom children learn about the wonder of bird migration. We've developed a specially designed board game which we take to schools with us, and children can take the persona of a migratory bird and try and finish a migratory journey and overcome all the obstacles a migratory bird would face along this epic journey. It's very rewarding to see children so engaged during our school visits, and it's very satisfying to see teachers inviting us again and again to visit the schools. We have an annual target of 1,500 children each year, which we happily meet. And in addition to that, we have produced a milestone in our education efforts, and first of its kind, a bird guide for children, which was published in 2017, and it quickly was out of print, and now we're working for a second edition, which we will be translating into English. And the response from this publication was overwhelmingly positive, and did not only appeal to children, but also to educators and their parents and adults in general. And it's paving the way for more education work here in Cyprus, because birds are popular, maybe popular in Cyprus, but for the wrong reasons, and we want to make them popular for all the right reasons, and encourage this, cultivate this love and respect for birds and the natural world. And it's for this reason that we put particular emphasis in at events for the wider public and families in particular. We organize a variety of events, bird watching events with ringing demonstrations, scavenger hunts, bird path making workshops, nest box building workshops. And our aim is to inspire and bring people closer to the world of birds. And our annual event, which is a celebration of autumn migration, we're happy to see that it gets more popular every year. And this is something that gives us the energy and to continue what we're doing. What I've just mentioned is just a fraction of what we do. We've developed a lot of education material in the past years. We've launched a mobile application. We've produced animations, a documentary. We're also working to develop a bird identification course to encourage young people to become involved in bird watching and volunteer in our bird monitoring programs. So we'll keep investing in the younger generations, and we'll be constantly growing and evolving our education program, taking into consideration the changing times. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Elena and Tassos. Excellent talk. Just everybody keep in mind that in the Mediterranean, every year, 25 millions of birds are killed. Just massive. BirdLife has recently done a study on what's happening in the Arabian Peninsula. That's also scary numbers. And in Asia, we're also conducting a review of illegal killing. It's definitely something that should have our attention. And it's great to see that BirdLife Cyprus is paving the way on how we can approach this with a combination of enforcement and educating future generations. So thank you for that. If you have any questions, please keep them coming. We now move to the final presentation already, which is by Tim Appleton, the founder of the well-known bird fair in the UK. Have now started a new thing, and Tim is going to tell it. I'm going to share slides, Tim, just 1 second.
Thank you very much, Barend, for giving me this opportunity to speak to this webinar. I found it absolutely fascinating, and what I loved about the webinar was the combination of pure science right the way through to, if you like, the last talk, which is very much engagement and doing things on the ground. And, I'm particularly keen to see Joaquin's one in Uruguay, because Bird Fair several years ago gave several £100,000 to the Grasslands project. So I was really excited to see that. So, and really that's sort of leading me on, having sort of moved on from Bird Fair. I've always wanted to engage with people, and it was rather interesting that I think Amy's early comments was birds connect our world. Well, my new venture, or our new venture, is basically global birding, connecting these birds with birding communities. And that's what I really passionately believe in, because, you know, without us working together for conservation, and it's going to be a hard uphill struggle. It's pretty hard already. So really what we thought, how could we sort of really launch this new idea? And the obvious one was to do something very special, and of course on a global scale. So we devised this idea of the Global Bird Weekend, working very closely with the October Big Day run by eBird, which has somewhere in the region of about 20,000 people already engaged in that activity. So what I want to do is to bring a lot more people into this global weekend, particularly people who aren't necessarily regularly engaging with birds. You know, this pandemic, I think, has brought out all sorts of new people to look at wildlife, you know, during their lockdown periods, whether it's even from their balcony or from their garden or from their local park. And there has been this upsurge of interest in birds and wildlife. And so what we're trying to do, therefore, this weekend is, first of all, get the media's attention by setting some world records, you know, the number of species. We hope to get, for a start, probably 25,000 people out, maybe even more, over, particularly on the Saturday, and then again on the Sunday, but primarily the Saturday for the big day. And also to record as many of the, we could even get 70% of the world species recorded in a single day. So we're talking about 6,500 plus species. Many of those birds will be photographed, recorded, and even sketched, and all of that will appear on our sort of websites. But of course, if you're going to do something on a global scale, then it's absolutely vital, isn't it, that we do something positive for birds. And one of the things that we really have spoken about briefly, the last talk on Cyprus mentioned the illegal killing of birds, or the illegal trade of birds, is horrendous. It's quite likely that probably something like 70% of all the new diseases, including this recent pandemic, has a connection to birds. And we know particularly in the Far East that the wet markets are basically a disaster waiting to happen. So what we're trying to do is focus on the fact that we can work with BirdLife International to stop the illegal bird trade. All right, it's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully by making people more aware of it during this weekend, the 17th, 18th of October, we can get people to donate, even if it's not huge amounts of money. I'm very conscious at the moment that everybody has had a rotten, a dreadful year financially, but every penny, every dollar, every yen, every rupee, every rand, sorry, I'm trying to go around the world quickly, but it will all count towards helping, which you can donate through our donor boxes. And what I think is the most extraordinary thing is we've already, in less than 2 months, had 112 countries register. This morning we added Sudan and Barbados, and already we've asked teams to take part. Now, I thought there might be 2 or 3 teams that take part. We're now over 100 different teams, and they're all on our website, globalbirding.org, and we're not sort of competing with each other. We're not asking people to travel all over the world or over their regions. In fact, we want to make this a low carbon event. We want people to be aware of their environment. So just go out, enjoy it, have fun, and perhaps join one of the local bird clubs or one of these teams. Just look at our website, globalbirding.org, go to the team section, and you'll see a row after row of teams, you know, varying from 50, 60 people in a team to 2 or 3, and even a family in an RV with a very severely disabled young man who can actually take photographs through his iPad. So, you know, we've hopefully tried to bring this Global Bird Weekend to the biggest possible community possible, whatever their lifestyles are. So hopefully, maybe some of the people on this webinar will grab their phones now, go to their computers and register for Global Bird Weekend. And again, thank you, BirdLife. Thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity. You know, it really is a most remarkable project, and hopefully you will believe well worth supporting. Thank you, Barend.
Thank you, Tim, for that passionate pitch, and I do hope many of us will go birding. I, for one, plan to join. So now we move on to the sort of preliminary closure, which Patricia will do. And after that, we'll come back to the questions that are still out there. There are many, many questions coming in. Some of them we managed to answer directly. Of course, we selected a few in which our presenters will be able to speak live to you. So keep them coming. But first, let's hear from Patricia. Words of wisdom.
How can I follow all these fantastic, extraordinary presentations from around the world showing all of the magic of the migration with words of wisdom? I'm not sure. I just want to say this has been an extraordinary tour from the beautiful Spoon-billed Sandpiper in the East Asian Australasian Flyway to the birds in the grassland lions in the southern corner of South America, to the efforts that we are doing in the Mediterranean with BirdLife Cyprus and all of the partners, but also talking about efficient birds, Barend, not lazy birds, the soaring birds. They're not lazy, they're efficient, and how fantastic they are. And I would say the cherry on the pie has been the extraordinary work that Xavi has been presenting with the how do you call them? Ornithographies? They're wonderful, absolutely fantastic. I cannot miss thanking Amy and Marco and all the staff of the CMS, because you guys are doing an incredible job for migratory species. We have, it is to me an extraordinary convention that is reminding us that unless we actually work together, we're not going to make it happen. It is about making this a safer place, not only for birds, but for all the rest of the species, migratory and non-migratory, for their benefit, but for also ours. I want to invite everybody to join the Global Bird Weekend, and team, we're looking forward to this weekend. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to bring the world together and to show how birds are all connecting us through the planet, through the migration around the world in every country. It's fantastic to see the response that you've got for so many countries that want to participate. It just shows how popular birds are and how wonderful they are, bringing people together. And if we can translate that into action to make this a better place for birds and for people, then it would be mission accomplished. So thanks so much for that. Thanks, Barend and the BirdLife team for putting this fantastic webinar together. Yeah, the message is migration is magic. Let's hang on to it. Let's let people know about this and help us protect our migrant birds. BirdLife is an extraordinary family, as you have been able to see. We work together to protect birds around the world, but we only can do this if you give us a hand. So if you can go to our donor box /Flyways and pledge your support. Your support will go to the hands of all of these great people who are working with us on the field, but also on the policy spaces. I saw a couple of questions about how to ensure that renewable energy and wind and wind farms, sorry, I cannot speak anymore, are safe for birds. That's part of the work that we do with the Energy Task Force of the CMS, but that's only that we can do only with your support. So join us, support us, and help us ensure that these amazing events of migration continue to happen throughout the years. So thanks for joining us, and let's go through the questions.
Thank you, Patricia. So there's a scary amount of questions that has come in. I will just work from the top. With a little help of Sarah, we should be able to get through quite a few, as we still have a little time. So let me check. So here's a question which I hope a combination of Stoyan and Tassos can answer. Can the EU not stop all hunting in the Mediterranean and Europe? It's a question by Helena. Is Tassos or Stoyan?
Yes, hello. If I may be blunt, it says no, they cannot stop hunting really, because under the European regulations, hunting is allowed if it's done in a sustainable manner. And essentially, this is also the approach as BirdLife partners we take. If it's done, it's in a sustainable manner. I repeat that. Illegal bird trapping and what we are facing in Cyprus and the 25 million illegally killed birds that Barend has mentioned is all concerned about illegal methods, whether it's mist nets, lime sticks, which is a huge issue that we're trying to resolve as BirdLife partners already. If we get through that hurdle, then maybe in the next phase, we can start discussing about hunting if it's done in a sustainable manner across Europe. I don't know if Barend wants to say something about that as well.
If you allow me to add that this is a long-term process involving the change of human perceptions. And there are a lot of dimensions that should be worked together. And BirdLife is doing a lot of efforts, you as well. But it's not an easy and short-term task for sure. Our main efforts now are focused on the illegal activities and activities which are really not sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Of course, a part of the Mediterranean is not Europe, so it's Northern Africa. So it's also part of the problem. But yes, it should be stopped. So here's a question to Sayam, Spoon-billed Sandpiper specialist. It's from Hawa Ismail. When there is an action to develop a nature reserve for these migratory birds, how can we, the local communities, contribute to the conservation of this migratory bird's habitat?
Well, as a member of the local community, you could do a wide variety of things. you could work with the local government and local NGOs to support the management of the nature reserve. And you could also help us to establish new nature reserves by, putting pressure or, putting proposal to the government so we can have newly established protected areas. Yeah, thanks. Over to you, Bart.
Okay. Okay, the questions are pouring in, so that's, I guess, a good thing. So here's a question by Matthew Tang. Does climate change affect migration times and paths? If it gets warmer in the Arctic, will migratory birds migrate south later or stop migrating altogether? If I may, I can make an attempt to answer this question. So yes, indeed, the climate change is a huge threat to migratory birds because it sort of disrupts the evolution that these birds have undergone. So what things, for instance, very simple things like birds get a cue when they should be leaving the wintering grounds. And that cue might not be connected to when is the peak to feeding of food resources available for their chicks. So it might not be a direct link. So imagine that a bird gets a cue, for instance, by increasing daylight or temperature, and then it thinks it's the right time to move, and it might arrive with changing climate that the peak in spiders and caterpillars has already been gone. So actually it will lay eggs and then find there's nothing to feed their chicks on. Another problem that occurs is that especially in birds breeding in very barren situations like in the Arctic, with climate change, it changes. So you get more vegetation, and that sort of affects the birds directly, but also indirectly, because it might be that that allows more predators to be around year long. So there are many effects, and there's great research ongoing on this. It's even there's a beautiful paper on red knot about how actually even the climate change is affecting the bill length of red knots. Limiting their options to look for food resources in the wintering grounds. So there's plenty to say. That's probably a whole webinar is needed to answer this question, but it's absolutely right that climate change is a huge threat to migratory birds and their systems. Thank you for this great question.
Can I just add one little note on that?
Please, Amy, go ahead.
Just in addition to the points you made, I mean, the other issue is the impacts of climate on habitat. So, it's not just on the timing of migration, but also on the essential habitat. So the linkages of biodiversity loss or change is one of the key concerns we also have vis-a-vis migratory birds and climate. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, sorry again, Tassos, one for you. Can you explain what caused the drop in trapping in Cyprus in 2005-06, as shown in your graph? A question by Marianne Antram.
Yes, one thing that we didn't touch upon during the presentation is that illegal bird trapping in Cyprus, but also in other Mediterranean countries, is heavily also political. So essentially, when there is political will or pressure to do something about it, then happens and then it relaxes. So in the case of Cyprus, around 2004 was when Cyprus was about to join the EU, and this was an issue that the European Union was calling on the Cyprus authorities to take action, and they did. But after we joined the big family of Europe, a few years after, enforcement relaxed, and that's why we saw that increase again in illegal bird trapping.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that answer. So I guess these questions are again for BirdLife Cyprus. Is the board game and guide available for sale and to be shipped to the US? An excellent education program. And along this, that was from Rochelle Hood. And again, Matthew Tang, are the books available on Amazon or other international platforms? Can you answer, Elena?
Yes, at the moment they're not available for sale. They're produced to be given out for free during our events and during our school visits. We would be happy to send a copy of the bird guide to anyone interested. The board game, well, a limited number has been produced, which we take with us to the schools. But there's a version of the board game available through our mobile application, and which is free for download. Both Android and iPhone, so you are more than welcome to download the application and give the game a go. Thanks.
Oh, great. Could you give a link to the application to Sarah? Then we can share with all the attendants.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. And there are loads of compliments for your work, all of you, by the way. Just moving down. Oh, go Cyprus. There's a lot. Okay.
While you're looking, Barend, let me
Yes.
just give a big shout out to a couple of people who have already donated. So thanks so much for supporting us and for helping us make sure that these flyways are staying healthy and alive.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Thank you. So here's a question from Paul Lelyveld. He's talking about 70% of diseases originate from birds. Is there a scientific article supporting this statement? Is anyone familiar? Who made this statement? Sorry, I saw the 70% and I thought that it was about the grassland bird. Sorry. Tim, did you refer to this?
Yeah, I referred to it, but it was taken from an article whereby, to be honest with you, I cannot confirm exactly where I got it from, but it was an article in a document. So I've just taken it as part of our press release, but it is a genuine figure. I'm talking about many diseases, SARS, COVID, obviously, and some flus as well.
Okay.
So I can't really assume that, I'm afraid.
Okay, Paul. So Tim, if you could dig it up at some time, we could share it with Paul later on.
I will do. Yeah.
Yes,
Cool.
thank you. Okay, another question to you, Tim. Can anyone register in more than one team at the same time? Is that possible?
Yes, of course. I mean, the idea, again, is to register individually, first of all. And I say that, if I can just give a quick plug to several companies that have offered some wonderful prizes. So anybody who registers, regardless whether in a team or not, will go into a massive great draw and win a pair of the new Swarovski NL Pures, a fantastic holiday offered by Rock Jumper and other prizes as well. But yes, certainly. I mean, what we're finding is several of the teams have many international members. You know, there could be, for example, I can give you Rock Jumper, I think have got probably nearly 50 or more in their team, representing probably about 15 different countries around the world. So yeah, please feel free to join any team, and of course feel free to donate to the on the donor boxes or the Just Giving boxes, which are all attached to each of the team's details on the team's page in globalbirding.org.
Excellent. Have we shared, Sarah, have we already shared the global birding link?
Only on the screen, but I'll pop it in the box for everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, but do I understand, Tim, from your answer that somebody can be part of two teams at the same time, or can two people from different countries be in the same team? I think the question...
Yeah, basically, yeah, you can be in at least two teams. Basically, so long as you put your eBird lists in and then share your eBird list with each of the teams, your team captain.
Excellent, it makes sense. And there's another question, and I think I know the answer. Here's somebody, is Vidya, is asking if he understands correctly that you can be part of a team, but bird individually. And the answer is yes, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so do it.
Basically you have individual eBird account, and then the captain sets up a team account with eBird, and you just share it with your team captain at the end of the day, but you still send in your lists independently to direct to eBird.
Thank you, Tim. So here, a question by somebody, and this is a question we cannot refuse. Could you please give the link to donate again? Great. So, and Ashraful, I can help you with your question is how can I be a member of your organization? You can sign up in two ways. You can become part of BirdLife International, or, and I would say that's the preferred option, is that you become member of the national BirdLife partner in your country, if there is. So reach out, if you go to www.birdlife.org, you can see all the partners and the addresses of our partners, and I strongly advise you to contact them. You can, at the same time, you can become a member of BirdLife International as well, for you to make the choice. Okay, and then there's another question for Cyprus from Aliona. How can citizens help protect the songbirds of Cyprus? Do you accept volunteers? Tassos, Elena, can you please answer?
Yes. As part of our systematic monitoring program, we do use volunteers to do the serving on the ground. But it's not that we have an anti-trapping camp as such. So it's not that there's a huge amount of volunteers used. The other thing that I always say to anyone that asks me this question, how can we help? The biggest help we can have, apart from support, you know, on social media or participation to our events locally, is to actually become our just to give you the understanding, in Cyprus, we are a small organization. We have 500 members. And whenever I go to a meeting with a minister, they are always weighing BirdLife Cyprus, environmental NGO, against the hunting organizations here, which the number 40,000 members. So it's that balance that the ministers, they always see. And it's always thing that I say, if you become our member, then you become our voice, you make us stronger in these meetings where decisions are being made or our lobbying effort is done to change policies, to draft regulations, and to take more action on the ground.
Okay, thank you. So here I have a question, and I guess I'm the one who should be answering it, but Deborah Rivel asks, how do ruby-throated hummingbirds keep enough energy to cross the Gulf non-stop? They seem to need fuel up on land a few times an hour. 25 hours is a long time for a bird that uses that much fuel to fly without eating. And then she asked, do they find insects open en route? So here's it. I don't know everything about the ecology of the ruby-throated hummingbirds. I don't think they eat insects. My guess is that all hummingbirds drink nectar from flowers. What I suspect is what they do is before they take off, they totally feed up on anything greasy, and that their weight probably doubles. And I also recall having read an article once, is that by the time they arrive back on land, they have used so much energy that it actually goes at the expense of their flight muscles. So if the flight's too long or the wind is adverse, they have a real risk of not making it. But I'm sure they're not traveling on the way. They just need flowers to do that. Unless there's somebody in the crowd who knows a better answer. I think this is one of the intriguing things about migration, that every time you dig into something, from a general pictures that all birds fly south, you discover they go always, and then thinking about questions, how do they do it? What adaptations they're making? For instance, it's well known that the waders, many of the waders, before migration, they reduce the size of their gizzards and other organs they don't need during the flight. So then they start flying, they have huge muscles and essentially fat on them to make the flight. But when they arrive, so imagine after that 12,000 kilometer flight from Alaska to New Zealand, they arrive in this perfect habitat for feeding, but they can't feed yet because their gizzard is so small, they can actually not digest it. So they have to wait a little time before they then can finally start eating. So I don't know the specific answer to this Ruby Throated questions, but I promise you that I will read up on it.
Hummingbirds do eat insects.
They do. Okay, thank you. I do know they use them to making their nests, but sorry. Okay, there's still plenty of questions, but I need a little cue where because there are also quite a lot of compliments, which is great to read up.
There's one on the reintroduction of vultures and the work on ibis, on bold ibises from La Hawaii. Can you see that one?
At what time did it come in? Sorry.
3:10. Just now.
Okay. Going down. Sorry. Yeah. Some countries on the northern shore of the Mediterranean have conducted several experiments on the captive and semi-captive breeding of a few raptors, which are endangered, such as the case of the bearded vulture. Is it the same for the bald ibis? Such experiments have given good results. The question that arises, why do we not think about reintroduction of species which are on the IUCN Red List in their ranges on the southern shore of the Mediterranean in order to be able to conserve the species and increase their population dynamics? Okay, so I think the person most specialized in reintroduction or in captive breeding would be Stoyan. Stoyan?
Yes, thanks, Barend. I'm not an expert on captive breeding, but we're working with this method. So the difference between the reintroduction program of bearded vulture, which is very successful, and bald ibis is that the bearded vulture is a sedentary species and highly territorial, while bald ibis is a migratory bird. And it's really exotic method which is applied with the bald ibis to learn birds how to migrate and where to go for wintering. Actually, the conservationists create new wintering grounds, which is safe of threats, because some birds have their migratory journey into their heads, so they are totally navigated by instinct, while other birds like ibises, geese, cranes, they learn from their conspecifics older individuals where to migrate to. And it's a challenge when you start a reinforcement program. What we do with the Egyptian vultures is not to solve the problem, as I think this was mentioned in the question. Actually, reintroduction is not a good approach if the threats are still operating in the place, because this will continue to cause mortality. But when the threats are operate in a larger geographic scope and they require a long term to mitigate them, then a reinforcement program can help to slow down the population decline until the threats are mitigated entirely or eliminated in order to boost the population recovery. I think this is enough as information.
Thank you for that. Okay, so another question is to Joaquin. In your presentation, you said at present 1% of the southern cone grassland biome is covered by bird-friendly managed, are being managed in a bird-friendly way. And what percentage will you hope to conserve over the next 5 years is the question.
That's a good question. We are right now in a process of a business plan that we are going to set that. In my opinion, I would increase that to I would try to increase that to a 5% or something like that. That would be great.
Okay, that's the ambition. Okay, great. Sarah, is there any big question out there that I missed?
I think you've done an excellent job, Barend. I think we've answered most of them so far.
Yes.
I'm translating one that is in Arabic, so hold on just a second. Let's see what we can.
Okay, that's good. So if anyone had a question and is really keen on having it answered, can you type it in again? Because you can imagine we now have over 120 questions and I'm losing track of it. So if it's at the bottom, I can quickly see it. Thank you for that. There's a question I can probably answer. How many people have participated in the webinar and from how many countries? And where will the recording be? Oh, sorry, it's gone.
Available.
Where will be the recording available? I guess Sarah answered that one. Yes, there will be a recording made available. I guess at the top we had around 300 participants, but it might be that people entered late, others left earlier. The recording will be made available. You will all receive an email in a few days with the recordings, not just of this webinar, but the whole suite of webinars that BirdLife has been hosting. So we have had a few webinars covering migrants in the Americas, in the East Atlantic Flyway, in the Middle East, in East Asian, Australasian Flyway. So we'll all combine it and share the links with you. Okay. There's Stephen. I think he's repeating his question. Tassos, you again. Cause of mist nets wide fluctuations.
In regards to the fluctuations in the mist nets that we have is because it's a random sample survey. So it's not that you are 100% sure. You select from the hotspots that we have, which is 400 kilometers squares. We randomly select 60 every season, like in the autumn, and we check those for illegal bird trapping activity for mist nets. So that is why you see the fluctuation every year on year.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So here's a question for Xavi from Rochelle. Is Xavi's artwork available to purchase? And do proceeds go to a specific conservation effort?
Can I jump in before Xavi responds? And we're just talking about potentially doing an exhibit. So, but Xavi, you respond.
Well, yes, my way of life is through selling prints. So if somebody is interested, please email me. My email is in my website. And well, I always, I'm open to collaboration, especially with a group like you, that because for one hand, for me, it's, of course, it's an artistic project, but for me, the interesting thing is approach to people that usually are not into the birding. So, well, it's part of my project also. And well, for me, another point is interesting to work with a team of people, no? So many of the times I miss this information, what is a good point to work with migration, or what is that interesting behavior that I could work with. So yes, for me, this experience always is interesting to make like a team building. So thank you for your invitation.
We'll definitely build up on this and set up something really exciting.
Yeah. This was already very exciting, by the way, Patricia, just to remind you.
No, it is incredibly exciting.
If I see that the beauty, sorry, I'm getting on with it, but when I see where you had this picture of the black kites in the southern part of Spain waiting to migrate over Gibraltar Strait, and then you see them and you can understand the ecology behind it. But if you look from a distance, it's like they're writing to us. There's a message there. I feel it's not a really good message, but help us untangle that and then we get somewhere. Okay, going to the final questions now. Yes, so that
while you select the questions, just let me, there are a couple of them asking about how do people learn about when are the next webinars, and so I have responded to some of them, but subscribe to the BirdLife newsletter. Sarah, it would be really good to put the link there. That's where you hear about our new webinars. We're having webinars literally every month. And then you can hear more about the news of the fantastic BirdLife partners getting conservation done on the ground.
Yes, perfect. Okay, here's a question. I think it's repeated, but again, a question I don't know. Well, I have ideas about, but it's not clear. Is there any effect of climate change on benthic prey, and how will it affect waders? And it's definitely going to affect them. And in some areas, it will be very negative. In other areas, it will be very positive. So I don't know the ins and outs, but I recall that in the Yellow Sea, there was a huge die-off of a preferred shellfish for Arctic waders. But the ins and outs, I don't know. If you're very interested in this topic, I would advise you to connect to the Global Flyway Network. That's a team of international wader specialists under the leadership of Teunis Piersma, and they have a great Twitter account, by the way, in which they share really interesting stuff about the relations between migration and feeding ecology at different stages of the migration. But I feel humbled to answer a question like this. Okay, let's take one more question, and then we're closing down on this webinar.
I think we've just had one more question come in from Jenny, saying about the Egyptian vulture, and where can she find more information on the project from BSPB?
On the website, there is live real-time tracked birds, the maps where they are, how they migrate. There is live streaming cameras, including in the wild nest during the breeding season, also in the aviaries of captive bred birds. So all the materials, including congratulations to the colleagues from Cyprus. We also have a similar education program, and the tools are available for download in PDF. So all the reports, publications are available on our website. I will share in the chat. Thank you.
We've had quite a few links today from questions to the petitions and various projects, etc. So if you signed up to hear more from us when you registered for this webinar, we'll include those links in our follow-up email when we let you know when the recording of this is online.
Excellent. And people who have indicated they didn't want to have a follow-up, but now realize how exciting this is, can they still change their preference?
Absolutely. If they follow the link that I just put into the chat box, which is birdlife.org/webinars, you can register for our mailing list there, and you'll get all the exciting information, including the post-webinar information about this.
Excellent. So there's the last question came in from Wendy. She lives in Mexico, and she's looking out to work with organizations. And more generally, please, if you're anywhere in the world and you make an effort for the conservation of biodiversity, and of course migratory birds especially, have a look at the BirdLife website and look up under the regions what are the BirdLife partner in your region. Generally, they are best informed about the situation nationally, so it might be joining up with them, or perhaps they have a local branch, or they have site support groups that you can team up with. So that's the place to go, and then you can really make a difference for to help saving nature. I want to close it down. Thank you so much for being so patient, coming up in such great numbers. It was a feast for me to see all the great presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it too. And I look forward to future webinars with you. And that's about it. Thank you so much for joining us.